Hi, I'm Alberto, and this is the Human Leadership House podcast. In today's episode, we're going to visit a friend to learn a practical way to become a better leader. Introducing Mitchell Davis, executive coach, culture strategist, and queer global citizen. Mitch is the founder of Cosmograph, a strategic consultancy that helps organizations navigate the human side of AI-driven transformation. With a 16-year career spanning healthcare, hospitality, and technology, Mitchell is committed to ensuring that humanity remains at the center of organizational change as emerging technologies take hold. So now, let's learn how he navigates complexity, builds trust, and leads with purpose. Let's go! Tell me, from your experience, one practice that is very, very unique to you that helps you stay true to yourself as a leader.
I call it radical acceptance. And actually, when I was just prepping a little bit, I looked it up because I'd never really done any research. It was something that I thought was just something from me. But apparently, there are some great scientists and writers who talk about this from a Buddhist mindset, actually. But I'll explain to you what it is. So, radical acceptance, from my definition, it means that no matter where you are, what you're doing, who you're leading, what project you're working on, mood you're in, you accept and are aware of that state of mind, state of emotion, and that helps you to move forward and to decide how you're going to react, as opposed to sort of riding a wave. I don't know if it makes sense to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. One of the things that I was thinking, I don't know, for the past couple of months, and actually I wrote about it. I have in my mind this metaphor of a surfer not riding the wave, but just patiently waiting for the perfect wave. You don't need to be 100% performing all the time. So if you want to have a blast as a surfer, just spend maybe chatting with your friend, waiting for the conditions, and suddenly, okay, let's ride that wave.
It makes complete sense. I love the metaphor. And it really reminds me of some of the stories that I jumped on a wave, let's say too early, or jumped on a wave that really wasn't mine, right? And I think that goes back to my personal history, right? As a gay person growing up in a conservative place, I really had to decide at some point that I needed to be my own authentic person. And that self that I have learned to enjoy, let's say, riding the wave of life in that sense, it has really allowed me to be aware when things or moments or waves in my life are just not for me. That self-awareness is a key to, I think, any leader's journey, any person's journey. But if you're going to, I believe that all of us can be leaders, regardless of if you're on a big team or anything. So you lead your own life, right? And I think if you are able to notice when that wave is correct, when you're ready, but also notice when you're not, somebody said, knowing when to leave the party, when it's not necessary to go and dance. I think that's really, really important and very powerful as a skill. So radically accepting who you are, where you are, what stage of life you're in, or not necessarily a stage that was defined externally, but a stage of you, right? Knowing exactly what makes you tick, what's important for you emotionally, and also giving you that stability for your next step, whatever that might be, or next wave.
Thank you. How can we apply this to the office?
It's very easy as a leader to get caught up in the whirlwind tornado of leading and having all these types of different responsibilities, I really think to start off, it's setting yourself down, turning your phone off, closing that computer, not locking your office door if you're lucky to have an office, and sitting with yourself and recognizing where you are. And some people will call that meditation, mindfulness. I personally do practice that meditative experience, and it's a habit that I have incorporated into my life. If a leader hasn't done that before, I recommend the concept from James Clear, which is habit coupling. So if you have something in your life that you do on a regular basis that's a ritual, in my case, coffee in the morning, when I have my coffee, I will sit down and have some silence. I meditate or I'll journal, but I'll make sure that I have that moment of calm before the tornado of leadership works, right? So let's take it to the corporate world. I've been in the corporate world for many, many years. I was at a big technology company for 9 years, leading big teams. And I found myself being that person who was running from meeting to meeting and jumping and saying hi to someone in the hallway who was asking me a question, and at the same time having to think about my next presentation, and at some point getting home to make dinner or to be with my partner. And it was just at some point really too much. So I won't say that I'm perfect. I have to also recognize that humility. So I think that is also something really important, that each leader, when they're going about this journey, that they radically accept where they are in that moment, right? Sometimes you're in the tornado and that's okay. You're aware of that. The awareness is the key. And then somehow finding that calm within that journey. So I'll give you an example or a story. When I was a newer manager, I thought that being a leader meant being a certain type of leader. And depending on what culture you're from, let's say in my culture, I thought of an element of leadership that was somewhat hierarchical, but at the same time egalitarian. So egalitarian, if your listeners don't know, is a sort of a flat hierarchy where you're at the same level in terms of responsibility and hierarchy and with your team. So there's egalitarian, and a lot of cultures, let's say in the Northern Europe, even in some ways in the United States, they have this egalitarian mindset. But I also, for some reason, had this hierarchical mindset that I needed to be more directive than I think it was a natural thing for me. And we were going through this big transformation on my team at the time. We were moving from a way of working that was really renewals, end of life cycle focus with our customers. And then we moved into having a more farming, adoption, customer success approach. And this was totally new for the entire organization. My boss at the time was great, and we're still close today. However, we went through this moment of stress, right? I think organizations, leaders, they know what that is. And this stress led me to think, okay, well, let me over index in the direction, in the hierarchy. Let me be someone that really I wasn't. And that didn't work. It backfired completely. My team became afraid to ask questions. They thought that they were supposed to know all the answers already. They didn't necessarily feel that same comfort or the egalitarian approach that they had become quite used to with my way, because that's more of the natural way that I find myself being as a leader. So the outcome was I lost that radical acceptance. It was being somebody that I didn't want to be, that I wasn't. And eventually it backfired because my team came with the feedback, and luckily I got the feedback. It could have been worse, that I was unapproachable. And that really meant that I had to sit down again in that chair, aware of where I was and what the mistakes that I had made, and own up to those mistakes. We sat down. I remember I took everyone out. I was like, everyone leave your desks. Let's go outside. We're going to go into the park. We're going to sit down. And I would love to hear what you've been experiencing and how I can potentially help. And we sat down. They told me what they were experiencing, the doubts, the fears. And I remember sitting there and almost becoming, almost crying, which I think is totally fine. Leaders should be able to cry. Uh, and I sat with them and I said, thank you. And I'm sorry. These are the things that I've been going through. These are the doubts that I've been having. These are the mistakes that I've made. And I promise to be better. I promise to be a better leader. So that radical moment, and I like to use the word radical because it acceptance can maybe be too soft. Sometimes we really need to be focused that it's okay to sit in that park, sitting with your team and say, I don't know, and I'm sorry, and I need to get better, and help me be better, give me feedback. That's great. And that's perhaps radical and the concepts of general leadership that perhaps we've been taught or some cultures have taught us to be. And I think that's been a really big change in my leadership career. And that happened many years ago, and I've never turned back.
How did you find the courage to do that?
Recognizing when something is not sitting right with you, when that stress is overbearing, knowing when you're doing things, small things, but that they just, you can feel it in many ways. If you're connected with yourself and you're being asked to do things that are against, let's call it your values, right? And I think those values can start to evolve over your career and lifetime. But if you're recognizing that there's something not sitting right, there's an increase in heart rate, there is increase in mood swings, there's perhaps you're sitting with your significant other and they're noticing it and they're giving you feedback. I think the courage is not necessarily so hard to find when you recognize that the person that you're being is so far from the person you want to be, and the experience that you're going to be having is going to be that of stress. And that's the greatest signal that rather than having to be courageous, it's having to be compassionate for yourself and for the people you're working for. So it's an element of, and yeah, being compassionate is courageous in many ways, but that compassion for yourself and therefore the people that are around you, it becomes a community driven response, which is easier to do as opposed to, I think, this maybe from the front end, it seems easier to follow what or the pressure that you're on and move that pressure out into your organization to be a different type of leader, to be more directive, to be probably even harsh in some cases. I know that I experienced that in my career. It's probably easier at the beginning, but eventually it takes its toll, right? And it takes its toll on you as an individual, and it takes its toll on your environment and your team. So it's important to not think of it as an element of I need to find the bravery inside of me. No, I need to find the compassion for myself and for the people on my team. And in that case, it's a little bit easier to make those moves.
Thank you. I've been knowing you for a while and I'm aware that you like data, but tell me something that you believe to be true right now in the world, but you don't have the data to support it.
Great question. And just as a caveat to that question, I read this book by Adam Grant, who's an organizational psychologist at the University of the Wharton School in the United States. I really enjoy his work and all of the data that he produces. And he wrote this book called Think Again. And it basically conceptually focuses on that elements of radical acceptance that I said before, which is to know what you know and know what you don't know, and to be able to use that humility to recognize when data presents itself that is contrary to what you believed before, that you change your mind. And changing your mind again and again is also fine. So right now, what I'm grappling with to answer your question is that there's a new and fantastic opportunity that we have through data artificial intelligence, machine learning. There's a new technology that's right in our fingertips. And I believe, and perhaps naively at this point, because I don't have the data, but I do believe that it has the power to support humanity, to create better communities, to support people across identities, with including diversity. If we teach it and we give it the right tools and we give it the right data, and we are conscious of what it can do and what the harms that it can also do, I do think that if we can harness that tool, we can solve some of our largest issues with that computing power, with the data that's truly available. Let's think about potentially some of these huge global challenges that we're having in climate and our ecosystem that is breaking under the weight of this. So yes, and at the same time, we have to be really conscious of what type of energy that costs us. So I'm willing to be wrong on this, but I want to hold on to hope that there is something good is going to come out of this new technology. And there's just a lot of, I'd say, opportunities with that if we can do it the right way, in the conscious way, in a responsible way. Yeah.
What about your color choice for today? Tell me about it.
That's right. When we walked in, we were like, "Oh no!" So we definitely we're ready for today. I feel like we're aligned. I've got a little bit different shades of green, but green is great. I mean, it's one of my favorite colors. So I'm glad that we were both wearing green today. It was very funny.
I don't know. Great minds think alike. Okay, Mitch, is there anything else that you would like to tell our audience?
Yeah, I talk about radical acceptance in the sense of compassion. It also doesn't mean letting everything go or letting everything slide, as you might say in English, which it means that it's important that for yourself and for others, that there's still accountability. You still have a responsibility to yourself, to your team. Your team members have a responsibility to you, to their job, to their work, to themselves in the sense of their own lives. I don't want folks to misunderstand that radical acceptance is giving up or letting things go. It means accepting where you are and then pivoting from that reality, making a change, making a decision. When you're presented with that new data, as we talked about, maybe making something else with that data, or choosing to lead in a different way, or choosing to support your employee or boss in a different way, whatever that means. And also, I think it's important to caveat what I say in terms of everyone's identities and underrepresentation in the world. It's easy to say, oh, you need to radically accept where you are and make changes when you have time, or when you might experience certain privileges. I know me as a white person, I experience privileges, and those privileges then can maybe make more space for these types of conceptualizations or ideas. So I think it's important as well to recognize that I have my own experience, each person does, and you have to go from that identity and that authenticity into the world of making those decisions from a conscious perspective with radical acceptance of yourself.
Awesome. What could be the best way for us to connect with you?
Always say LinkedIn. I think it's a great way to connect with the other person already. I get to understand a little bit more about your ethos and your world, and you can see a little bit about me. So LinkedIn, Mitchell Davis, and find me online.
And if you want to connect with me, go to connect.albertocblanco.com. All links in the show notes. So let's wrap it up.
Thank you, Alberto. It's been a pleasure to be with you and to connect with your audience. If you do want to connect after, feel free to reach out to me. And I hope we can do this again sometime.
Thanks for listening and watching.
But I know for sure the day will come when you first realize what you have done, and you finally get your debt repaid and revenge is served on a cold plate. Oh yeah, on a cold plate.